had just given birth 10 minutes ago when my phone buzzed with a court notification saying someone had already filed custody papers using my name. I thought it had to be a mistake because I hadn't signed anything, spoken to any lawyer, or even told anyone outside my family the baby was born. The notification stayed on my screen like it didn't care that my whole body was still shaking from labor, like it had all the time in the world while I could barely keep my eyes open. And at first, I honestly thought it was spam because hospitals send so many automated texts that half of them look fake. But this one had my full legal name, not the short version, not a typo. And when I tapped it, the page didn't ask for a login or anything dramatic. It just opened to a plain document preview, like the kind you get when someone shares a file with you. And right under the title, Guardianship Petition Draft, it said, Prepared for Elena Marlowe. And I felt that slow, cold feeling spread across my chest because I knew I hadn't filled out anything like that, not during pregnancy, not before, not ever. And I actually checked the top corner expecting to see some random law firm advertisement or template watermark, but there wasn't one, just a timestamp from 3 minutes earlier and a note that said draft saved. And the baby shifted against me, making that soft newborn snort. And I remember thinking how weird it was that something so small could feel more real than the document on my phone. Like she was proof I was awake and this wasn't some medication dream. And I zoomed in on the file name, and that's when I noticed it included my last name spelled correctly with the extra letter people always forget, which meant whoever made it didn't guess, they copied it from somewhere official. And my mouth went dry because only a handful of places had my name spelled like that. Government records, insurance forms, my laptop autofill. And I turned my head toward the room door because I could hear my mom's voice out in the hallway talking softly to someone, using that calm, polite tone she switches on for strangers. And for a second, I told myself I was being paranoid because she'd been helping all week, bringing food, answering texts, telling nurses I was resting, basically running my life the way she always had whenever things got stressful. And I almost closed the file right there, almost convinced myself it was nothing, until I noticed one more line at the bottom of the preview that made my stomach tighten. Last edited on device, MacBook, Safari browser. And that wouldn't have meant anything except my MacBook was the only Apple computer I owned, and it wasn't in my hands. It was sitting across the room inside my bag where she'd put it earlier after saying she'd check my insurance email for me. And right then I heard the door handle move, and I locked my screen without thinking as she stepped inside smiling like everything in the world was perfectly normal. Tell me honestly, would you confront her right away? Or pretend you saw nothing and wait to find out more? She walked in carrying that same calm energy she always had, like nothing urgent could ever exist in a room she stepped into. And she asked softly if the baby had eaten yet, and I said yeah, even though my voice sounded strange to my own ears, then and careful because my brain was suddenly louder than the room, replaying that single line from the document preview over and over. Last edited on device, MacBook, Safari browser. And I kept telling myself that didn't prove anything, that plenty of people own MacBooks, that files can sync across devices, that stress makes you jump to stupid conclusions. But the problem was I knew exactly where my laptop was and exactly who had touched it last. And she set her purse down on the chair and leaned over the bassinet with that gentle cooing voice she used on babies and pets and anyone she thought needed managing. And I watched her hands without meaning to, the way her fingers rested lightly on the blanket like she was already comfortable there, like she belonged in every decision involving my child. And I told myself again I was being unfair because she had helped me all week. She'd answered calls while I slept, texted relatives updates, even handled the pharmacy pickup when my prescription got delayed. And that was normal for her. She always handled things. She'd handled my school forms when I was little, my college housing paperwork, even my first job contract, because she said legal wording overwhelmed me. And the scary part was, she wasn't wrong back then. I did used to freeze when forms looked complicated. But I wasn't that girl anymore, and she hadn't seemed to notice that change. Or maybe she had and just didn't agree with it. And while she adjusted the baby's blanket, she said, "You should rest. I can answer your messages if anyone asks how you're doing." And something about that sentence landed wrong. Not loud, not obvious, just slightly off, like hearing your name spoken by someone you didn't realize was listening. And I felt that same cold pressure in my chest again because she hadn't seen my phone screen, she didn't know about the notification, yet she was already offering to manage my messages. And I glanced toward my bag across the room where my laptop was zipped inside. And for a second, I imagined the lid open, the screen glowing, someone sitting there typing carefully, copying my full legal name from some saved file, and my pulse picked up, even though nothing in the room had changed. Not her posture, not her expression, not her soft humming while she looked at the baby. And that was the part that scared me most. If something had happened, she wasn't acting like someone who'd done anything wrong. She looked exactly like someone who believed she was doing the right thing. If someone truly believes they're helping you, even when they act behind your back, does that make it betrayal or protection? I didn't say anything right away because the room suddenly felt like one of those glass boxes at museums where every movement looks bigger than it is. And I knew if I accused her without being sure, she'd shut down or worse, take control of the situation the way she always used to, when teachers or doctors asked me questions and she'd answer before I could open my mouth. So instead, I shifted the baby gently against my chest and said as evenly as I could, "Hey, can you grab my laptop from the bag? I want to check something." And she didn't hesitate, just turned, unzipped it, and handed it to me with that small approving nod, like I'd finally asked permission to handle my own life. And my hands felt steadier than I expected when I opened it, because part of me was convinced nothing would be there, that the document was some automated template coincidence, and I'd feel ridiculous for even thinking otherwise. But when the screen lit up, the browser was already open, not to email like she said, but to a document preview page, and my stomach tightened so fast it almost hurt, because I recognized the layout instantly, the same plain header, same file title, same formatting I'd seen on my phone. And she was still standing beside the bed, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her sleeve near my arm. And she said lightly, "Did you find what you needed?" And I clicked the tab history instead of answering, because if I spoke, my voice would have given me away. And there it was, timestamps stacked one under another from the last half hour, all from this device, all opening variations of the same file name, and I noticed one tab labeled Instructions, and my chest tightened again, because I hadn't opened that earlier, so I clicked it and a simple help page loaded explaining how a draft guardianship form could be prepared in advance by a third party and then sent to a parent for final approval after birth. And I swear I could actually hear my heartbeat in my ears at that point, because that meant whoever started it hadn't needed me present, they'd only needed my information. And right then she rested her hand lightly on my shoulder and said almost gently, "Sweetheart, you shouldn't be stressing yourself with paperwork today." And it wasn't what she said that made my skin cold. It was the way she said paperwork. Not confused, not curious, just familiar, like she already knew what was on the screen without seeing it. And at that moment, would you confront her with the laptop open in your hands, or pretend you saw nothing and keep digging for proof first? I didn't plan to confront her that fast. It just happened, like my body moved before my fear could stop it. And I turned the laptop slightly so the screen faced her and said, very quietly, "Why is this open on my computer?" And for a second, she didn't react at all. Her expression stayed smooth and polite, like she was still talking to a nurse in the hallway. And then her eyes shifted down to the screen and paused there just a fraction too long. Not shocked, not confused, just calculating. And that was when I knew she recognized it. Not like someone seeing something new, but like someone checking something familiar. And she let out a small breath through her nose and said, almost gently, "You weren't supposed to see that yet." And my stomach dropped so hard it felt like the bed tilted, because that wasn't denial, that was timing. Like the problem wasn't what it was, but when I'd found it. And I said, "See what?" even though we both knew exactly what. And she pulled the chair closer and sat down beside the bed, folding her hands the way she used to when she explained things to me as a kid, patient, composed, reasonable. And she said, "It's just a precaution." and I actually laughed under my breath because nothing about custody documents sounded like a precaution, but she kept going in that same calm voice, telling me how overwhelming newborns are, how many young mothers spiral after birth, how courts sometimes move slowly when emergencies happen, and how this was simply something prepared in advance in case I needed support and couldn't make decisions clearly. And every word sounded rehearsed, not emotional, not defensive, just structured, like she'd practiced saying it in a mirror. And I felt this strange split inside my chest, where half of me was furious, and the other half was that same little kid who used to believe her when she said she knew best. And I asked, "Support for what?" And she tilted her head slightly and said, "For the baby, sweetheart. If you get overwhelmed, if something happens, if you can't cope." And her tone wasn't cruel. That was the worst part. It was certain, like she wasn't insulting me, she was diagnosing me. And I stared at her because I realized she wasn't trying to steal my child. In her mind, she thought she was protecting her from me. And she reached out like she was going to touch my arm and added softly, "I'm just making sure she's safe no matter what." And something cold settled in my chest right then because I understood the real problem wasn't the document. It was that she genuinely believed she had the right to decide whether I was fit to be a mother at all. If someone truly believes they're saving your child from you, can you ever trust them alone with that child again?